Hello, this is Miss Andrea, and I am not that type of homeschooler. This is my journey of not fitting in socially and politically with my local homeschool community. Now, when a person decides they want to homeschool, we're always told to go out into the community and find fellow homeschoolers. And that is what I did, and that is what many of us do. And we do fine. We make friends, acquaintances. But there are some of us who just don't fit in for whatever reason. And while the journey is palatable, the discomfort is palpable. So, when we began homeschooling, it seemed to me that our differences, mine and, the local homeschool community around me, was obvious because, one of these things don't look quite like the others, i.e., I was typically the only black homeschooler in any room at any time. There were others, uh, but there weren't enough of us to be together at the same time to make a difference. It was just always that feeling of being the only one. So, but I was Christian and they were Christian and we were all homeschoolers, so what could go wrong? Granted, this was the earlier 2000s, started in 2003, fully entrenched by 2005, 2006. Comfortable, uncomfortable, but comfortable. And making friends the way I've always had. Like, this isn't new to me, especially when I got to high school. In Catholic school, it was a little more integrated. But when I got to high school, I was always the only black child in the advanced classes. I was always the only black employee in the internship. So, with my husband being an executive, we were always the only black couple at the event. Like, this wasn't something I was not used to. So I just didn't let it get under my skin at all. I did fine. I did fine. Um, and I knew we had some differences that went deeper than skin, which I'm good at effectively ignoring. I was effectively ignoring the skin issue because that's how I've always dealt with things. But I knew the differences went deeper, um, especially in the way that we viewed education. Because someone would say, well, what curriculum do you use? And I'd say, whatever I was using at that moment. And I would always get this response, well, that's not the science we use. Or if they would say, how's your child doing? And I'd say, oh yeah, they're like 3 grade levels above. Well, we don't judge homeschooling that way. We take a more natural approach. We don't worry about grade levels and academics like that. And I was always like, what are we doing? I thought we were homeschooling to give our child a different educational opportunity. Where I come from, a different educational opportunity meant an excellent educational opportunity. But I understood that I was also a fish out of water being from the north, and so there was a difference in the way we viewed education. I was stringent. I was like, we are doing this. We are busting out this homeschool thing. It's going to be awesome. And like, I just felt like I kept getting chastised for being too hardcore about academics. So yeah, like, it was real clear to me that that was a problem, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I realized, however, that they thought I had a faith issue because I've always been Christian, but I'm a Northern Christian, if that makes any sense. Went to Catholic school through 8th grade, and then went to a black church, and we just had a different set of rules for faith in the North than there are in the South. We were more laid back about things. Like, we weren't so rule heavy. The South does get that thing right about the relationship with Christ. I never really heard that until I moved south, and I appreciate what I learned. But all the rules on ourselves, and especially all the rules on each other, I grate against that. But the problem that I found they had with me went a little bit deeper than upbringing. It seems that my lack of reliance on faith in God for our homeschooling outcome was unsettling to others. As in, I was being extremely proactive and analytical about how we educated our children. And I was hearing, you need to have more faith. God's got it. God's got it in his hands, and you're being too hard on your kids. Guys, I'm not hard on my kids. Like, watch my last video. I'm not hard on my kids. But, they saw it as me being too hard on my kids, me being too academically ambitious, and it was grating to them, to my local homeschool community who I dealt in and day out. And I kind of got the bless your heart treatment, and they really thought that I wasn't going to be successful because I didn't rely on God enough for homeschooling. Now, they don't know my relationship with Christ. They don't know how my faith works. They don't know the conversations I have in the dark. You know what I mean? They just felt like I was relying more on my personal works than on the works of God. And that's real cute, but that's just not how I was brought up. And I'm okay with us not seeing eye to eye there. My mother was fond of telling the little parable, and it wasn't a Jesus parable, it's a modern parable, of the guy who was in a flood. And he called out for Jesus, and a guy came by, like, with, I'll just throw out some things because I'm paraphrasing. A guy came by with a rope, and he didn't grab the rope. He was like, I'm waiting on Jesus. And then another guy came by with a boat. He didn't get in the boat because he was waiting on Jesus. Another guy came by with like a plane ladder, and he didn't take it because he was waiting on Jesus, and he drowned. So my mother always taught us that, you absolutely have faith, but God gave you the tools he gave you. Use them. And so that's what I was doing. And that I just didn't see eye to eye with my local homeschool peeps at all. And then the 2008 election happened, and I said, oh, okay. And I've told this story in at least 3 other videos on my channel because it disturbed me greatly and it hurt me in my soul. But when that lady sat down at that table where I was had volunteered to do this thing all day, had volunteered to sell tickets for this play all day. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. And I was actively selling tickets. And she knew I couldn't get up and walk away from her. And she said in her loudest voice, are you voting for Obama because you're black? Like, that cut me in a way that nothing anyone else had ever said or done had cut me in a homeschool situation. Because, so open and so welcoming and blah, 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 blah. And then when I said, are you voting for McCain because you're white? She got upset and she just announced to anyone in earshot that I wasn't Christian if I wasn't voting Republican. So that's kind of the water that this fish swims in. It's not the water I was raised in, but it's the water that I swim in. So I'm definitely a fish out of water here, because I've been ghosted over the years. And I just read this yesterday and I realized, oh my gosh, that's what's happened. I've been slowly ghosted by the evangelical Christian community. And my husband was a church leader. Like, we were church leaders. We were in a church plant. But because I'm so liberally minded, friendships that we cultivated for a decade are gone. Slowly, one at a time, just ghosted. I don't care. I mean, if you don't care, I don't care. You know what I mean? So, and then there's the YouTube channel. And by the way, I'm making this whole video because my friend Epic Kate, who I did a collab with recently, and I'll link our 2 collabs. We did a double channel collab. I'll link both collabs in the comments, not the comments, in the description. Asked me to clarify something that I had written about or said, something I had recorded, where I said that whenever I was real authentic in my YouTube channel, I was unsubscribed by evangelical Christian homeschoolers. Because in the beginning, I was super careful to not say anything that would offend any homeschooler. And then as I became more comfortable with the camera and became more authentic with myself, every time I voiced something that didn't fit that mold, I would lose subscribers. So let's talk about those things that I would lose subscribers over. HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Hate them because I find them to be reactionary. Like, they're trying to get a rise out of you. They're trying to get a premature or unnecessary rise out of you to force you to buy their service in fear. And it's not expensive. It's actually very well priced. The legal homeschool insurance service is actually super well priced. But the tactics that they're taking to make you buy it really aggravated me, because I realized by year 3, because I did have it, like every good homeschooler, I realized by year 3 that the stories were starting to loop and cycle. Because, oh, this homeschooler was harassed here, and that homeschooler needed HSLDA here, and that homeschooler. And then I just started seeing the stories loop back. And I'm like, I already read the story like 3 years ago. What? So I'm like, oh, shoot. They're using tactics. I see you. I realized that their whole Generation Joshua thing, that they were literally using the money that they raised for homeschool insurance to fund a youth training political action committee, PAC, whatever that stands for. A few of my students are on a campaign trip with them right now. Is what it is. But I realized that they were using this money that they were raising by being excessively reactionary and sending out these alarm messages, and they were using it to fund a political group. That did not sit well with me. If I give you money, you use it for what you tell me you're using it for. Point blank, period. Um, and I'm not paying for a political agenda. Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Moose, nothing. I'm not paying for that, and I just don't appreciate it. So when I made that video, I lost a ton of subscribers. And then there's the whole teaching science thing, environmental science. Like, homeschoolers really are of the same mindset that we're seeing. Not all homeschoolers, gosh. In my local homeschool community, at the very least, there's the mindset that too much science is bad for faith. Whatever that means. Look, that's not something I worry about. I think science should be taught. I think especially science labs need to be taught because that's what colleges want. And if you want to get into college, then you need to do the science labs and you need to learn science, period, the end. So teaching science caused some disgruntledness, especially teaching reproductive science. You're not supposed to teach that. You're supposed to glaze over it. Once again, that's not how the Christianity I was raised in worked. That's Northern Christianity is something else, y'all. I tell you what. And then there's history. There's that whole young earth approach. And I guess because, some stuff happened and Jesus came and here we are. When none of us really know the full story of the earth, scientists are making new discoveries daily. And just from teaching history these past 2 years, things I'm reading from scientific journals actually line up with the Bible. So I don't understand why people are anti-science and history in order to be pro-Bible. Like, I'm seeing parallels. So, you teach the things. You teach enthusiastically. And then there's the whole thing of whenever I review a curriculum that's written by a popular conservative homeschool group, and I say what's wrong with it. Science isn't right. Math isn't stringent. Just not hard enough. I get a bunch of lost subscribers. But I haven't received the type of bullying that I've received as part of the homeschool community as I've received since middle school. Think how we think or be on your own. That's changing. It is. There's a lot more people that look, act, and think like me homeschooling. Not a lot of them live where I live, but they're there and I can make the connections and, have the community. So, yeah. And did I say academic excellence? Because you can't have enough of that. So, there's this thing that happened as my daughter, age 15, was finishing the 11th grade. Because, we accelerated. This is homeschooling, and we have the freedom to move at her speed. So we did the thing. We did the thing. And mothers of her homeschooled friends would come to me and say, are you sending her to college? Yeah. Are you sending her to college at 16? Well, actually, she's just on my birthday, so she'll be 17, when she gets to college, after we've done the counting. Oh, what kind of college are you going to send her to? we're looking at women's colleges. Lesbians go to women's colleges. I'm like, perverts go to co-ed colleges. Doesn't matter. I mean, we're looking at women's colleges and we're looking at small colleges, and we'll make a decision, you know. And they were just like, why would you go through the trouble of raising her to feed her to the wolves? And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do with her? And they're like, well, she could get a job and she could be living with you until she's married. And I'm like, by the way, she's living with me and she'll probably never get married because she's such an independent human. And she is 24. But, nah, I sent her to college. Like, they were all okay with educating the boys, but they were not okay with educating the girls, number one. Number two, that whole homeschooling on faith thing. And yeah, homeschoolers just do better on tests, and homeschoolers just excel in unexpected ways. So you kind of can just go on faith. But I just thought with my competitive self, if I put some academic excellence on top of that, you know, that we could really shine. And we did. You know, I didn't pay much for college. Thank you, scholarships. So, like, that was grading. Like, my whole academic excellence spiel, which a lot of which this channel is about, is grading to a lot of homeschoolers because it's not faithful enough. It's not trusting enough. Let me tell you something about being a Black homeschooler. And this is how I ended every conversation that got to imposing on me, because they'll come at you hard. They'll try to break you down. They'll preach to you, and they'll start praying on you, and they might grab your head and pray because you're not faithful enough. What was I going to say? Oh, let me tell you. Let me tell you about being Black and homeschooling. A white child can homeschool from birth to 12th grade till they're 18 years old. And where I live in the South, they can walk into any business and say, I was homeschooled, hire me and train me, and they will be hired. No questions asked. Let a Black child try that. It's not working. They'll be like, what do you mean you were homeschooled? You mean you watched TV? They underestimate us. They underestimate our effort. And meanwhile, we're the ones busting our butts trying to be better than everybody else. They underestimate our efforts and our abilities. And so, therefore, you can homeschool a white homeschooler to 18 and let them free to the world to do whatever they want. But a Black homeschooler had better have a higher education degree, whether it's an associate's degree, a series of certificates, a bachelor's degree, or a master's degree. They better. You have to have a piece of paper to say this person learned and was judged by an academic institution. You have to. Is what it is. So, that's all I have. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Go visit Miss Kate and say hi. Until next time.